All right, so one thing that we wanted to kind of add to this service was the ability for us to stop people from attempting multiple logins without us kind of blocking them off and not allowing them to hit our database every time. Really just a kind of a layer in front of stopping some DDoS attacks. And so what's going to happen here is we want to add some functionality in here that says if you try to log in more than 10 times, or whatever arbitrary number you want to use, we want to go ahead and block you off. We don't want to allow us to keep trying to look up a user in the database if you've crossed this threshold. And really all we're going to do is block you out for like 10 minutes or 24 hours or whatever you want to set that number to. Doesn't really matter. The functionality is still kind of the same. So there's a few moving parts to this. I've created a few templates to kind of get us going fast, but we're going to walk through this together. So here in the security, I'm going to create, in the security package, I'm going to create a new class, and we're going to need two of these. We're going to call these authentication failure event listener. And so that's going to be one, and yes, we want to go ahead and add this to Git. And I have, like I said, I have a template here, and it should look something like this. And I'm going to create a new one for success as well. So let's just say authentication success event listener. And we'll create that and add that to Git. Again, you don't have to follow along right this second. You can kind of pull this from our repository. So we'll say that's JE. That looks good. Okay, so these are events that are going to get caught, and basically we're implementing the application listener. So we're basically listening for a couple events here. Authentication failure bad credentials event. And so this is, we're listening for this on the success side and the failure side. So if we look at that and that. So on both application events, we're actually just going to log a new service that we're going to create called the login attempt service. And this login attempt service is just going to create, it's going to log when it succeeds and when it fails. And that's going to be the basis for us figuring out how many times they've actually tried failure-wise or success-wise. We'll kind of clear that out once that happens. So now let's create a new class. We'll create our login attempt service. If you didn't know, you can actually come in here, hit Alt-Enter, and since that's not defined yet, we'll actually create a login attempt service. And so we'll create it in that package, and yes, we want to add it to there. And so that is our login attempt service. And again, there's a little bit going on in here. I'm going to actually take this down to 3 for now. This is our max attempts, so that when we go ahead and test this and show you it working, we don't have to sit there 10 times and do it. But basically, there's an attempt service that sets up a cache. We're setting up a duration. So we're going to say for 10 minutes, we want this cache to live. Obviously, if you wanted to use something like days or hours, you could change the time unit and change it to something else. We're just going to use 10 minutes for now. And then we have a login succeeded and login failed. So those are getting called from our event listeners. And from our event listeners, we'll go ahead and log whether it succeeded or failed. And if it succeeded, we're basically invalidating that cache. If it failed, we're actually adding a new attempt to that cache. So once we get to 10, we'll realize that, all right, we got to block them out. And then we just have a little function in here called isBlocked that we're going to call from our user details service to find out if they're blocked. And again, we're loading this up. You'll see a string and an integer. The string is basically going to be their IP address. The integer is the number of attempts that we've taken. So let's jump back over here. This should be working now. What is going on here? Duplicate class found in. Okay, authentication failure event listener. Authentication success event listener. What did I do here? I just had to clean those up. I was actually duplicating in my live templates both of those. So now we have an event listener for both failure and success, and we have our login attempt service. So the next thing that we need to do is our domain user details service. So now that we've kind of got those events in place and we're kind of we created a cache and we're logging successes and failures, we need a way here in our user details service to figure out, okay, if we're going to block them, if they are blocked, then there's no point in us looking up in the database anymore. And that's what we're trying to prevent here, is people keep hitting our database when we know they're just trying to basically attack us. So here's what we're going to do here. So what we want to do is we first want to get in here and we want to get an IP address. So I'm going to say string IP address is equal to, and we'll say get client IP, and we'll go ahead and create that. So we need to create a function down here for that, and we actually have one here. So let's go ahead and take that. And so all this does here is grab the client's IP address. But the way that it does this is it's actually using the request context. And for us to be able to use that, I'm going to jump back here and I'm going to add a quick bean in here. And we'll say request context. And all that's doing is, again, this is kind of replacing the functionality of doing this in, say, a web XML. And all we're doing is defining a bean for request context listener to give us access to that. So now we should be able to pull that. So what I want to do here is we just need the HTTP servlet. So I'm going to create a variable here called request, which is of type HTTP servlet, and that should give us what we need. I also want to go ahead and create a private variable for our login attempt service. So we'll call that login attempt service. And we're going to want to go ahead and add those here to our constructor. So what we're going to need is our HTTP servlet request, and our login attempt service. So we'll say this dot request is equal to request. This dot login attempt service is equal to login attempt service. So that should give us what we need here in our user details. And so now what we can do is do a little check. So now that we have our login attempt service, we can say if login attempt service, remember we had a method in there called isBlocked, and what it's going to take is an IP address. So it's just taking a string in, and if it is blocked, we just want to throw a new exception. And so we're going to throw a new locked exception, and we're just going to say blocked. And so that should give us what we need in our user details service. Now we need to kind of catch this exception and be able to handle it, because if we don't handle it, then there's no way to tell the user a difference between, hey, we've gotten some bad user credentials, and guess what? You've been blocked for trying to log in X amount of times without the right username or password. So there's one more thing we have to do to make this happen. And if we go into our, let me see where we need to go here. We need to go into our config and our security configuration. And if we look up here, we are creating these new AJAX authentication success handlers and AJAX authentication failure handlers. So these are actually in the JHipster package. So we're not going to create, we can't just take these over, but what we can do is create our own. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to step back. And so for this, we're going to actually create our own. And to do that, here in security, I'm just going to create a new Java class. And we are going to call this RFB, running for Brews, AJAX authentication. And this is our failure handler. Okay, so if we click that, okay, yes, I want to add that. And did I create a template for this? I did. So let's get that out of here. Okay, and so all we're doing here is, now actually let's back up one. Now that I've actually created that, we want to return a new RFB authentication failure handler, not the one JHipster has provided us, because we're going to do a little customization in there. So if we save that, that should be good to go. We can get back out of here. So now all this failure handler is doing is, this is extending the simple URL authentication failure handler, and it basically allows us to on authentication fail. So when we fail, we can handle it somehow. If we don't change this, all it's going to ever return to it is an unauthorized error. And with that unauthorized error, our Angular application, it doesn't get any error messages right now. All it gets is 401, and it knows to basically display the message, failed to sign in. So we're kind of tackling that problem here. We're given a default message of failed to sign in, but what we're also doing is looking at the exception and seeing if it is blocked. And the reason we're looking for blocked is because that's the locked exception that we're kind of throwing. If it's blocked, set the error messages to you've been blocked from our system for 10 invalid login attempts. Again, we can probably customize that a little bit better, but that's kind of what I'm going to run with right now. So what I want to do is actually place a breakpoint here. And actually, we don't even need to do that. I can just show you. So that is the Spring Boot side. Now we need to make a small modification on the Angular side. So if we jump on the Angular side, let's go into Web App, and we'll go to App, Shared, Login, and let's go to the Login component. And so the one thing I'm going to add here is authentication error message is a string. And so down here, when we do our login service, again, we looked at this before, but this is going to call the login service, pass this information. When it's fulfilled and everything works out right, this is what it calls. When it's rejected, this is what it's going to call. And so we want to make a small change here. And I think we just want to, just look at my notes here, sorry. Yeah, so we want to make a small change here. We're going to set the error message. So we're going to say error message is equal to, and this is a little dirty for me, but this is how it comes back as like the body. So we're going to parse the body, grab the message out of there, and then what we're going to do is we're going to set this dot, we're actually going to, we get this passed back, and I'll show you this. So if we look at our login service, this actually throws back the error from this. So I'm going to jump into here. I'm going to pass this back. Now I get the error. I'm parsing that out, and I'm saying this dot authentication error message is now equal to that error messages we just created there for us. So that should give us what we want, but now in the login component, we're going to want to change one thing, because we simply display a static text here. And so what we want to do is we want to display that authentication error message. So I think that is everything. Let's go ahead and fire this up. Okay, so we have launched our application. I'm actually going to pull this window up a little. I want to see if we can get the console here and my window up at once. And so what we want to do is go ahead and watch and see what happens here. So let's go ahead and try to sign in. We're going to sign in with some bogus data here. And it says failed to check in. So basically try to look us up, and we're going to try that again, and try that again, And now it should go ahead and throw that error, which it looks like it did. So let's look here. So we are throwing that error now, which is good. Blocked. And that looks good. So we're throwing the error. The only reason you're not seeing it here is because we are in the Spring Boot app. So if we were to come over here and go yarn start, we did get an error message there. What did it say? I'm not sure where that warning is coming from. Login component, error message is not defined. Although that error message should be defined. Error message is never reassigned. Oh, yeah. So we could probably change that around. If we're only using it here, we could probably just change that to set it here. There's no reason to define a local variable if we're not really using it again. But anyways, so here's our 9. Let's go ahead and sign in. Bogus data once, twice, 3, and now 4 times. Now we're seeing our special message that says you have been blocked from our system for 10 invalid login attempts. So that's, I know, a lot to take in, but let's just do a little quick recap. And I don't expect you to just run through all this right here. You can go ahead and pull the source code out and check it out. So we need 2 events first. We need to be able to listen to events. And the way we do that is we create these authentication failure and success event listeners. And they're basically doing that by implementing the action listener. And we're listening for 2 different events there. So once we listen for the event, we use our login attempt service to log both failed and success events. And that's how we kind of figure out how long or how many attempts they've had, and then how long we need to kind of block them out of our system. Finally, we make some changes to our domain user details service. Instead of looking up the database user for that user, if we find out that they're blocked, we just drew a new locked exception. And then we bubble that up and we catch that in our RFB AJAX authentication failure handler. And then we return that message to the client. And in the client, we made a couple small changes so that we can display the correct error message back to the user. So I hope that was fun. This was kind of fun going through, putting together. So if you have any questions on this, please let me know. Thanks.